Thanks for having me, and it always sucks to be the person in front of lunch. I have a coworker who gets really hangry, and I might be putting some of your lives at risk, so I apologize. I'll be fast. So, where's my slides? There we go. My slides are not coming up. There's anything on the screen? Bear with me. You guys see anything? Okay, I can't see I don't have them in front. So oh, here we go. Okay, here we go. So, I love old cameras. I used to be a photographer. I take lots of pictures, and I love a picture because it tells 1,000 words. I now take pictures on my phone, and I also collect them. And as a result of my collection for cameras, I now go to auctions. And auctions are really cool. When you think about pricing and auctions, auctions technically are the way where you can maximize someone's willingness to pay to maximize value to the buyer and the seller at the same time, because you find the person has the perfect opportunity and the perfect sellability. So you're trying to match, buyer and seller together. But the reason why I go to auctions isn't because I want to maximize the amount I pay for something. I'm looking for incongruence. I'm looking for the opportunity to get that deal. So how does this all begin to tie together? So if you look on the right there, or I think it's your right, you see that green scale. That is a scale that was produced in the 1900s, which was from International Business Machines, a company you may have heard of. This is before they got into typewriters. This is before they got into computers. Well, when you think about it, a scale at that point in time was really the foundation of the first configurator. And this was a multifaceted configurator for the time. You put some flour on it, you turned the dial, and you got your price, and you could leave. It was really the early parts of the consumption-based economy. So you roll the tape forward. I now, as mentioned, my phone is now out of date. I actually take pictures with my glasses. I got the new Metas, and they're already out of date. They got the one with the new screen, so the only constant is change. But now today's products are not flour and beans or nails. It's AI, it's compute, it's assemblies of technology. So the reason why I emphasize this that snapshot, it's a theme that's going to come up and exist throughout this. We have consumption-based pricing, and now we've moved forward and ahead, and the only constant is change, right? So this is where we've heard a lot of mention of, like, for example, OpenAI, and you have different organizational ethoses and abilities for risk or appetites for risk. So this concept of R to R, risk to revenue ratio, is something that's really important that every organization understand what their number is. So if I'm OpenAI, I don't really care. I want acquisition at all costs. Most of my customers care about making a profit because they're publicly traded companies and they need to make sure they show growth and profitability. So there's a lot of variability in your organization depending on what you're trying to achieve, like capture a market, or maintain, stakeholder profitability so your shareholders are happy. So, how do we move from that old scale to that new scale? And one of the big challenges as mentioned, I think there's a lot of variance in everyone's usage of outcome-based pricing here, for example. Launching a new product, especially in outcome-based pricing, can be super, super risky, right? The challenge with that risk is you don't know the predictability, and we have a bunch of customers. So our customers, multi-billion-dollar organizations selling all sorts of different assemblies, which I'll kind of get into. So we have one customer, for example, who sells stadiums as a service. They're the world's largest turf producer, and they have 27,000 global installations. Pricing precision is absolutely essential to them. So I have 4 models here, but my customers have data, they have compute, they sell blades, and the costs are crazy. Like electricity is a huge one, but for my data center customers, cooling is super, super important. So when they sell something, there's a huge assembly of costs underneath it, but the sales team who's selling it in front, you don't want them to worry about that. However, me as the RevOps person, I absolutely worry about that. So the way we look at the world is a bit different. So when we talk about cost configure quote or price configure price quote, we have an extra C in front of it. And the reason why we do that is we focus on B2B. Our deals can be very, very large. And unless you have that understanding, you're kind of flying blind. So when we actually build a configurator with our product, we actually build the nuclear elements of every cost input when that guy's pulling or woman pulling a quote together. So when they generate a quote, they get a whole cost profile of what that deal's worth and when it's going to pay back. And this is extremely hard when you're doing outcome-based pricing, right? Because you don't know what the consumption model is. So, and as mentioned, times are changing. I'm not going to slam Google, but I'm going to slam Anthropic here. So, anyways, sorry. We had one of our internal designers using, he came to me and said, yeah, I had to develop this dot on a slide for one of our screens in our software. And he said it cost me $70 in Anthropic tokens in our API to make that circle smaller. We got this huge bill because he did it multiple times, right? We could not foresee that cost. And one of the challenges with organizations now, we're all learning about AI and how we integrate with these different systems, but we need predictability so we can make sure we don't put our organizations underwater. And this takes us to the next slide. And this is where the rate of change is happening so fast now. Our teams building product, pricing products cannot keep up with the potential risk factors, right? So I'll get to the punchline soon, but this is where you really absolutely need to know cost controls when you're selling deals. And there's a bunch of variable reasons for this, but ultimately, we need to stay in business. We need to make a profit unless we know we can continually lose money, and most organizations can't afford that. But we need to help our teams understand that delta and the rate of change has never been faster, and it's only going to increase. So how do we actually put guardrails in place to enable that to happen? So there's also this cost to value mismatch. Like if someone said, hey, you want a bullet on your PowerPoint slide for $70, like I would say no, but I have that bill, I have to pay for that. My customer's not gonna pay for it, right? So I need to make sure we have systems that enable me to see that before that happens so I can price it in or get a different vendor. The other thing that we found is there's a huge black box behavior in AI. It's really hard to interrogate. For example, for us to go back and try to understand how did we get 8 million tokens to do this circle. We had to figure out how did that ever happen? How was it so repeatable? How come we couldn't figure out how could we stop it? So understanding that black box behavior and that speed, because my product managers and our customers' product managers are launching products faster than ever, right? So how do we make sure we have those guardrails so we don't make bad decisions? So Dem from DeepMind, you might know him, he's CEO, he released this article last week. And he has this concept of what he calls jagged intelligence. And he's saying AI is absolutely super fantastic and amazing. However, doing some basic, simple things, it can really suck, like basic math. So our customers need absolute pricing precision in order to enable that they have success. A quote can't be 85% right. A configuration of technology can't work occasionally, because otherwise you destroy customer faith, and at the same time you put yourself out of business. So how do you solve that, leveraging AI, and at the same time make sure you get absolute precision? So what you need is a fusion of deterministic models in AI. So when I talk about deterministic models, I'm talking about the old way, building code that's, 5 nines in accuracy when you're pulling a quote. We have embeddings in our platform, and we actually try to get 5 nines out of quotes using AI, and we also have some really complex configurations from our customers, and we just can't get there. So we're having to fuse the AI and the deterministic systems together to make sure our customers have absolute price precision. So as mentioned, hopefully in the near future, this will be cracked. But for the time being, if you're worrying about quotes and worrying about price, you need to make sure you're taking care of that. You just can't blindly trust in AI and hoping it's going to work. So you really need to have what we call, deal or economic intelligence relative to the deals you're trying to sell. So, one of the cool things, when you start fusing this in best-of-breed technologies, you need to make sure the signals you're getting are accurate. Like, I can't afford $70 dots. Like, we need to make sure dots are less than a penny or whatever your ethos is for price. You need to make sure when you're looking at something, you have that embedded economics so you can quickly see the deal profitability, the payback, so on and so forth. And ultimately, you want to use AI to surround that opportunity with great insights. So right now, we're using LLMs to actually do deal analysis for the deals that we've already got the deterministic model on, which is super impactful for our users. So the other thing you need to worry about is, as Ren mentioned, the rate of change has never been faster, right? So when you're building an architecture or a solution set for your company, you need to make sure you can integrate new solutions quickly, right? So we invest very heavily in our APIs and our ability to integrate with other best-of-breed solutions. So there's the monoliths on one side, and I would argue, Salesforce is a bit of a monolith. However, they're the largest CRM, and they're the best of breed, arguably, in the CRM world, and we integrate heavily with them. But at the same time, that flexibility for us to work with Logisense and other solutions is really, really important when you're building your architectures. So this is kind of where we fit in the configure, price, quote world. And we do lots of cool things. As mentioned, some of our customers sell really huge things. Some of our customers have quotes with 300,000 line items. And some of our customers sell one product that's an assembly of all these crazy costs, like so many dollars per meg or gig or output or outcome. but we capture that assembly of prices on the inside. So we're calling like the deterministic model, or the way we do things, the new trust layer, because you need to make sure you have that 5 nines accuracy in your costing and your pricing, right, to get you there. So just leveraging AI for AI's sake is really, really dangerous. So as mentioned, speed without visibility is really, really high risk. The boards of our companies, or the companies we sell to, are really worried about a lot of these things. And they're asking us all the time, like, we have all these tests, we have to make sure our revenue's always spot on for everything that they actually do. So the other thing that's really important is we don't only sell cost assemblies, we sell technical assemblies of configuration. So when you buy, for example, we'll stand up a data center in a quote. So we'll understand cooling, cabling, the software required to actually set something up. So the cool thing about AI is you can do some really good harvesting of that knowledge. The other thing that we built is this sort of guided selling, because as mentioned earlier, you want to keep your superstars focused on the biggest deals and the biggest opportunities. But you also want to harvest the knowledge. In our world, it's more these sales engineers that are the rock stars. The sales engineers win the technical deals. But we harvest the IP and knowledge of how they sell, how they appropriately configure systems to make sure the customer's successful. We put it in a configurator, so a new sales guy can just ask some very simple questions and get the outcome that's needed. This is also super pertinent to the outcome-based economy, because when you think about it, you're standing up a service for the first time and you're saying, we don't want to have any upfront, we don't have any baseline. That's really dangerous if you don't know the model of consumption from the potential customer. So it's really good to have some great questions saying, well, what do you think you'd be consuming on a monthly basis? What kinds of things you're trying to do? And if they can't answer those questions succinctly, or the organization you're trying to sell to, you should probably set some baseline pricing tiers to make sure you're getting your monthly costs covered, because otherwise you're flying blind and it's super high risk. If they answer appropriately, that quote should be configured very differently, saying, oh yeah, we're just going to give you this unit cost per month, consume as many as you want, we're off to the races. We've been doing this for a long time because, outcome-based pricing or cost per unit pricing has been around forever. And we have one customer that they maintain one of the largest fleets of mainframes in the world. And they sell MIPS. But they know, when they talk to us, what are you trying to solve with the MIPS? They have a high price profile, understanding absolutely what a project happens in MIPS. And they don't even put any floors in it because they know exactly, based on what that customer is going to do, what the monthly consumption is going to be. And they make a lot of money on that arbitrage because it's great. It's great. I only have to pay this per unit or per MIP. Oh, great. And they know they're going to go through the roof. They're going to make a ton of money. So it's codifying that information in your systems to de-risk your revenue. So this is kind of the hero moment for us. So I mentioned that embedded knowledge and guided selling. But anytime you generate a quote in our platform, it creates what we call a deal dashboard. That deal dashboard, because we have all those nuclear elements of cost built into your quote, we can show the RevOps team exactly how that opportunity maps and how it maps to the P&L. And that's important for a bunch of different reasons. When you're selling large deals, you have to do forecasting on what does the impact of selling this significant deal do to my business? Do I have enough money in my bank to deliver the services that I have to pre-buy to make this happen? That sort of insight is super powerful. And also, you see this chart here, you notice it dips down. A lot of our customers have to stand up very significant investments before they even sell something. And that's the case with anyone in the usage economy. It just doesn't start from zero. You've made some investment in people, you've made some investment in infrastructure. So you need to understand, what does that curve like, especially if you don't have a base rate or a monthly minimum. If you're just flying blind and hoping, based on transaction, that's where the risk really, really happens, especially if it's a really expensive deal. But once again, the ability for this to show this. And so we can show some different things. As mentioned, you can understand the impact by line item on your P&L, but we also have the ability for you to understand how each individual input is discounted and costed. So you can say, hey, we paid hard cash for this sort of stuff we do on our own, we can give it away. But it's your decision to sell a bad deal, because sometimes you want to do it because you want to win a customer. But you want to make sure it's an informed decision, so you're flying with the right vectors, so you can make sure you're ultimately going to get to what we call good revenue. And the other thing about it is we go here in service contracts. So you think about, sorry, I'll go back. So if you think about the dashboard or the deal dashboard, that's your snapshot. That's your 1,000 words about a picture telling you how good this deal is for my business. So that's really, really important. It tells you who did it, how it was configured, who worked on the deal. The other thing that we do, that's really important, we have this concept of service contracts. And think about service contracts as the aggregation of those snapshots. It becomes a film. It shows you what did that customer buy over their history with us. How is it configured? What's rolling off? What's not getting supported? And how do we move forward? And when does it renew? And there might be multiple renewals or multiple products within that. So it gives you massive transparency, massive understanding, and really strong governance related to pricing of deals, who changed what, when, and where. So I was in Japan last week, and I don't know if anyone been to Japan. How many people went on the bullet train? Like, I was amazed. Like, I'm from Canada, and when you're in Canada on a train and it's coming to the station, you're sitting down because it's shaking so much you're going to fall over. On the Shinkansen, they say, oh, we're about to get off of the station. Please stand up, get your bags, go to the door. You go from 280 kilometers an hour, and you almost stop right in the station perfectly, no real motion, and you get off the train. Like, perfect execution, right? Ultimately, that's what you want your quotes to be. Very predictable, safe, and dealing with all the turmoil with your system around it to make sure you have the really strong governance to make that happen. Right? And so, high trust, repeatable, predictable all the time. So, in closing, we all are in uncertain and very volatile times. You can turn that into a real strategic opportunity to maximize revenue for your organization if you have true insight. And we can control the insight and putting it into our systems. Leverage the fact that we can profit from these incongruent markets. And make sure you're giving yourself the guardrails with systems that'll make sure you get the 5 nines, you're quoting, your pricing, and your costing. Really imperative. So, oh, did I miss? Yeah, sorry, bear with me. So we believe in cost of serve. We believe integration is really, really important because there will be new systems, there will be new methods to do things, and getting those systems into your organizations as fast as possible is really, really crucial. And we believe guided selling is a really great thing to capture knowledge. And the other cool thing about guided selling, just from an FYI perspective, from an AI model, is if you build this, if you institutionalize these pieces of knowledge, this can also be in your headless architecture because you're harvesting all the business logic that you've already built in your organization. And instead of having a sales rep go through that question list, it's someone on a portal, but behind the scenes that is assembling and de-risking you all the way till that final quote, that final opportunity, that final close. So, I think I got, bear with me. Did we go there? Okay. I think I might, there we go, thanks. My slides are in a bit of order. Anyways, I've got 9 minutes left if anyone has any specific questions. Hi.
Hi. Charlie Munger is famous for saying, you show me the incentives, I'll tell you the outcomes. One thing that I was curious about here is where do you bake in or conceive, what is it about the sales incentives I'm offering my sellers that could be driving certain outcomes? Is that a part of all or can you encourage? So I feel like that's, as a product marketer, someone does pricing and packaging, has been sometimes the story behind the story that's impacting.
Yeah, so just for reference, a lot of these dashboards that you saw today, our sellers never actually see. So they only get triggered if they go through a threshold because your goal is to try to get that velocity. We have still the ability to leverage spiffs and incentives, so on and so forth, but at the same time, that's built into your cost of serve to make sure you're not underwater. But you go back to what is your risk appetite? A lot of times when you're doing sales comp, you are losing money on deals because you're trying to get net new accounts, right? It's kind of a thing. But is that a good long-term strategy? Probably not. You want to transform it. So, there's a whole bunch of methods to do that, but yeah, we can support it.
And how do sellers feel about harvesting their knowledge?
So our experience has been, especially when you institutionalize the knowledge in the guided selling, is a lot of your sales engineers who we really depend on very heavily, or architects in our world, they hate doing these mundane configurations. So by actually removing those, it makes retention higher. They get to focus on really cool new things like AI, building new models, and it also accelerates the sales team's ability to get deals out the door faster, because that's the other key thing, right? Remember, the first deal normally wins, right? But the problem is there's this anticipation and energy to try to close a deal very, very quickly. And sometimes you make really bad behavior because you're just trying to get the quote at the door. What we've done is we've abstracted away the need to have your RevOps team approving every deal because it's done automatically unless it triggers a threshold, either technically from a configuration perspective or from a pricing perspective where you don't hit your throttles or your numbers. So it's very beneficial.
Thank you for this. This is great. In your risk assessment, do you have a separate processes and methodologies where you count for overattainment compensation for the salespeople? Because you have one rainmaker, like we're talking here, he blows his curve to the accelerator curve. He has a director above him that puts him on the same accelerator, and then there's a VP above there. And by the time you know it, you have 50% of that deal blown by bonuses.
Yeah.
Because being an accelerator, and how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, we work with some compensation management tools for those very things because we are accelerating and making a repeatable, successful model. But in some situations, we've absolutely abstracted out a lot of the sales comp because there's a lot less people involved in it. So you no longer have the SE, right? So that's not involved. And it just depends from a cultural perspective, what do you want to do, right? Because you want to keep your best people incented and you want to keep them aligned. So we have customers who have used it in ways that I don't necessarily agree with. I'm always about comping your salespeople or your organization. We good? Awesome. Well, thank you very much.